24 meeting of the Poolesville Planning Commission. On the agenda this evening, we have the citizens' comment on agenda items. Any citizens ready to comment? Nobody?
Nope.
Here. Thank you. Any announcements from staff?
Do you want to take it, Wade, or?
Go ahead.
Okay, so at the last commissioners meeting, they approved the PIA for Poolesville Crossing that you guys had looked at last month. We included the edits that Kevin had given me, the little edits, minor edits. So that has all been approved and adopted. And that's kind of the main thing. I was trying to think if there's anything else on my way over, but.
Not really. I think I think that we're going to close on a property last week or even early this week, and then they're looking to move forward as soon as they can. And I think that Mr. Willard also next door is going to be wanting to move forward with that project. They're trying to line up a contractor. They believe they have one. We're waiting for the final details before he reveals who it is.
Yep.
Awesome. And the chicken ordinance passed as written, right?
Yes, correct.
That was, I think it was since the last meeting.
Yes.
All right. No announcements from Martin, who's not present.
Yeah.
He didn't forward it any long, so.
That was the main thing, was the PIA. So he wanted to make sure that that was expressed.
And has everybody had a chance to read the minutes of the May 15th meeting? Any comments, questions, or edits?
I do. I have edits. So under new business, 5.1 Poolesville Crossing, it has that Commissioner Radigan moved to that the planning committee approve it. I believe that was my first and Kevin's second.
Thank you.
Also, under the comments on old business follow-up discussion of the cultural arts / historic district, I would, if everyone's okay with this, I would like to add to that the planning commission discussed refining the district to a cultural arts district.
Oh, yeah.
As the boundaries are not necessarily based on historic property inclusion.
Okay.
And I will motion, if no one else has any edits or comments, to approve the minutes with those changes.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. No new business, and so we'll move on to old business, the follow-up discussion on the cultural arts district.
Yep. All right. So we can just sort of go through what I kind of talked about. So coming off last time when we sort of, as Lexi just mentioned, focused on the idea of the cultural arts and sort of putting the historic arts aside, I did some research where I looked overall at other municipalities and what they did related to these are all ones that have an arts or cultural arts district as designated by the state through that program. They don't necessarily have, none of them that I saw had a cultural arts zone as such. They each took a sort of a different task with how they approached this topic. So one had a floating zone that was sort of meant to spur future development in their downtown. Another referenced arts in their downtown through various ways. One had a outdoor art code as part of its regulations. And so it was not necessarily one for one, but I thought it took some good elements for us to discuss. So, for example, Snow Hill had put some specific list of uses that they wanted in the zone, and they sort of did them in broad categories. That is in
Last one.
it's sorry, I misspoke. It's Town of Berlin who had it as sort of 12 uses that fit in, general categories that they fit in. So I thought that was a good way of sort of thinking about some of these questions. And then Oakland had the outdoor art, which I thought was a good reference just in terms of David from Riverworks has talked before about doing outdoor art and something like that. So I figured that was something to consider. And then Snow Hill had references for things like walkability and things like that in their redevelopment overlay zone and their floating zone as well. So that was sort of the way that I thought about the research, because what I was thinking coming off last month's conversation and heading into what we'll talk about with the use chart is the way in which there are general things to talk about and specific things to talk about. So we can specifically talk about specific uses and go through that list, but we can also talk about what types of uses, what types of environment. I forgot to mention that I also included information in links in the memo on the form-based zoning. So there's a video that the town of Frederick did that I thought was at least informative on how they thought about redevelopment in that case, where it's all entirely about making it the look uniform, making the buildings and the streetscape all fit sort of these goals. So part of the research that I engaged in was that. Then the other part was talking about the uses of I used the old central business district and the current use chart. So there's a few uses that were never part of the CBD that are generally at the end, like the miscellaneous category used to only have 3 things, and there's more in there. So in that category, there's an example. But those looked at, in general, it was this idea of kind of trying to define the uses, in terms of things that weren't the light industrial uses or things like that in those sort of general categories. I kind of broke that down, those ones that were completely excluded, and those that were special exception versus permitted, and sort of the differences within that. So that was my general overview. I don't know, Wade, if you wanted to add anything on what we discussed.
No, I think the video was really good from Frederick and a lot of good stuff, but there's really no one way to approach this, and everybody has their own way they do it. And that's kind of why we're just kind of piecemealing this through to build, what our vision is going to be. So let's just proceed.
All right. So then the next thing, I figured the easiest way for us to discuss the specifics, sorry, I'm going to switch to the other mouse, is to kind of go through, either you can go through each line or we can go through and talk about the things that Lexi herself has highlighted and any other questions that either Brian or Kevin had on the use chart as is, or if there's an approach that you want to take, like have us look at the use chart from a specific perspective. So is there a specific type or types of uses that you want us to investigate more in how it was done previously or how it was done now, if that makes sense?
I'll just say, Niles, I think you did a great job of lining up all the different use examples, and the City of Frederick video was very informative. I liked the way that they approached it, and I think they said on there it's like a 20 to 30 year vision. It's not, they're not going to turn this around next year, right? They're looking long term, which is probably the way we need to look at it. Frederick's got a lot more, city's got a lot more resources than, our town does. So there's just my comments on that. And the key thing that I just did a little bit of research myself, walkability comes up a lot, and you found that as well. That comes up a lot. And one thing I thought of that would be good to look at, and I'm sorry I didn't think of this till now, was to look at the comprehensive plan and the streetscape plan on top of overlaid on this as well, because I know there's more paths that are going to be in place that would lead to Wayland Commons, for example, and how that might play into, I know we don't want to make this a huge district, like I think maybe one of your examples has said, walkability should take no more than 10 minutes to walk from one end to the other.
Right.
Now, I did have a chance to talk to an artist friend of mine, and they, talked to them a little bit about what they would expect from an arts district, and kind of the feedback I got was, it's not necessarily about, build it and they will come, because I think a lot of places are set up where you can't have outdoor streetscape artwork, and it's walkable and it's all built in. I'm not sure that we're set up for that yet, but that could be something that could be long-term. So just some random thoughts that came out of the research, and I just wanted to give you that feedback and kind of throw that out there.
And a couple of things to note on that front. One is we're currently working on various things related to walkability in the area anyways, like extending the sidewalk on West Willard and things like that. So there's ways that we are already approaching it that are sort of immediate. And then I think that's part of what I thought about just with the outdoor art and things like that, looking at those parameters is something we might not want to get to right away, but was something, another part of that.
And definitely if anybody, I know Niall was sharing some of the definitions, all the definitions need to be reworked
Yes.
for the whole chart and
Yeah.
updated.
But I figured that would be a process we could go through also.
Oh, you're gonna do that, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some information that I think needs to be reorganized related to other things, like for example, the accessory building one includes information that's related to the development standards, but you wouldn't know it unless you went to the definition. So there's things like that that we need to fix structurally, I think, with the code, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, the maps were in there too. I think we'll probably be revisiting that. In my mind, I think we're probably gonna end up shrinking that down a little further than what it is now.
It's just,
I agree.
just looking at that too.
Yeah.
That's the thing that keeps going, I keep going back to in my mind, even when I'm thinking about uses, I think about the land that we're talking about, the area that we're talking about.
Right.
And it, yeah, to me, it's about, it should end up being no more than 2/3 the current size.
Yeah.
So are
And
you
it's not a,
Yeah, I want to lop all of this off now.
Yeah.
the northern part? That's what Wade and I talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, that
It was
whole,
all south of Fisher, right?
yeah, basically.
East side
I mean-
of Elgin.
Yeah, I would, especially all of that stuff on the corner with the, maybe just like this.
I think we can stop it at Willard too. I think this is ideal here. That's probably
You're
only,
gonna capture it in 3 blocks? You want it cut across here, especially since.
Here.
oh, John Pool House and, yeah, locals, yeah, sorry. Yes.
I don't hate that idea at all. And
But
I
as
think
soon
if we're gonna do that, then I would recommend tightening even farther the restrictions that I would have.
We just had a
I heard-
bang here, so John's going to see if there's something
I heard a bump.
got tripped or something.
I thought someone just kicked something.
Yeah. What were the boundaries you were thinking? Sorry.
From Wooten to Fisher, and then between, on the other side of Fisher, just including John Pool House and locals and the corner building, so just that little block there. And then Willard to Norris.
In Willard to Norris? Okay, so it would be, yeah.
So it's a oblong, right,
2.5
Yeah.
blocks.
yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
so that makes more sense than you take a look, because everything could be a special exception if you wanted it to be or not permitted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't really align, I mean, there may be some historic aspects to it, but it doesn't really align with the historic concept, because there's a lot more historic stuff outside of it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Just keep it separate.
yeah.
I think I have to agree with you completely on bringing down that size.
Here. Yeah.
Down
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Just kind of where I figured we'd go.
Yeah, yeah.
Just took us 3 meetings to get there.
You know what, the only other thing we might consider is when, this building gets taken down at the end of Norris,
Yeah,
and we put in that green space, that might be a decent area for, some outdoor art of some sort too. And it's right there, that park that's going in,
yeah.
the overflow parking.
Oh, you mean in, right next door to us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
It's part of where the development,
Where the development will go.
Yeah.
Well, that we can,
it's gonna be dedicated.
It'll be town owned.
yeah, it'll be town owned, so that's,
Alright.
yeah, that's kind of separate. So that could be a use that we use for it,
Right.
but yeah.
Don't have to zone it. Okay.
It might have been me. I keep bunking, like,
You're good.
Didn't find any meteorite through the roof.
Okay.
I think it might have been my head.
No cars on fire in the
No
parking lot.
cars on fire, no
Yeah.
tires blown out, yeah.
That was productive. Now what? I'm concerned about going through the use chart and then rehashing the same discussion again when we have other commissioners present, other board members. present.
Right. And I was just wondering, I figured my thought of how we could progress here is if there are specific things or more general things that you want us to look at in terms of the use chart, like either categories or things like that that you want to look at. And there might not be, and that's fine, but that was just my
I mean,
thought
there's
of,
probably some things you can probably go through and just eliminate, such as video rental.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
my blockbuster
Right.
comment.
yes, I appreciated that. I worked at a Hollywood Video in college, so,
You're dating yourself.
yeah.
And as we're going through this, and Niles put in the very last sentence of his memo,
Yeah.
was that we will have to, once we figure out a better direction, we can kind of round it out a little better, invite all these property owners in. And because we are putting limitations on some of these property owners. So that's just something to think about as we're going through the process also.
Yeah, I specifically would like to restrict the use of things that take up large sections of area like nurseries. Like,
Yeah.
I'll bring that out. And I mentioned this specifically because the building on the corner used to double as a nursery 10 years ago? Didn't it have? Yeah.
Probably longer than that, but yeah.
Yeah, so that type of use, while a floral shop would be great, and I'm 100% for a flower shop, I don't want something that's going to come in and require a lot of space for such a limited use. So I think that we should really look at being much more restrictive on that type of thing. And I had pointed out a few others, which, again, we don't have to go over now, but like, that sort of stuck in my mind that, we need to make sure that we're bringing in things that have high value for space. If that makes
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think that's things where I was looking at, even what they'd done before for the CBD was kind of the same idea, so, RV camper storage, stuff like that. Sorry, go ahead, Wade.
No, you're right. It was a mixed bag because they still wanted to keep the agricultural, community in mind, which doesn't lend itself to this at all now.
Right. But there are other areas in town where there are tracts of land that could accommodate that sort of use. So it's not like
Right.
we're saying that it cannot be used in town. We're saying it can't be used in these 2.5 block section.
Right.
I don't know if we have to answer this, but I guess the question is, if it doesn't go there, where in town could it go?
Right. Like, in terms of
Need
just,
the space and be able to do it.
well, like, I mean, again, it would be talking about the rest of the commercial zone could be potentially, depending on what type of business it is.
Right.
Or,
Yeah, you're right.
or there are businesses that are on Bupp Road,
Yeah.
like Bernie Mims and such, that have more space because their use is for lack of a better term, more agricultural.
I mean,
you know.
the nursery idea is a little bit more retail than what Bernie Mims and those guys
Right.
are out there. So you want it to be probably in the CBD, but there's some opportunities, I think.
Yeah.
Well, sure.
I'm just thinking that we don't-
They already exist
Yeah.
on the other side of Norris Road.
Yeah.
Up on Wooten and Norris, there's three different places that they could run a nursery.
Right.
Yep.
I'm just thinking of like, the Potomac Nursery right there, inside Gaithersburg off Darnestown Road. Like, that's a big use, and
Right in the middle.
right in the middle.
Okay.
But beyond that sort of thought, everything else I think should wait.
Do we want to get rid of just strike through the Blockbuster?
Yeah.
It might make a comeback, who knows?
Yeah. Video rental and sales. I have where it's at, so.
Yeah. John's video. I was
And
reading,
then I guess the other question is, are we missing things? That we need to research that and make sure we're not missing things that can go into an arts type district that just don't have it on our list, our radar right now.
Did I see a gallery?
So I don't
I
think,
it
saw,
was-
I saw museum, but like,
and you could
museum and gallery.
put it, let's check the
like a
definition.
retail gallery, right? What?
And Riverworks is a prime example. We don't have a definition for that, and Jay had to opine, it fits this definition, kind of, sort of, and when they went through that process.
Yeah. So that's one for sure to think about, is something like a
Yeah.
cultural arts or something like that.
Outdoor theater, I think that's in here already, but
Outdoor theater is, but that was a good example of outdoor theater was not allowed in the old CBD. So it was in the commercial, but it wasn't in the central business district. So,
right, and that can be redefined, you just do the definitions, because an outdoor theater in 1950 was much different than, a band show or a
Yeah.
live entertainment ballet like they're gonna have at Riverworks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see anything that references like gallery or craft sales or artistic sales.
and we can look at what some common
Yeah,
definitions are.
Definitions are, right.
Yeah. Gallery.
I see antique handcrafts and art shops.
Yeah.
Might be in another section too, like I might. There's a lot happening here.
And someone may have said this in jest earlier, but you can't just apply a special exception, could you, to the entire,
Sorry, say that again?
you couldn't just apply a special exception to just the entire block?
So you could, basically, we could, but what we would end up doing is that it would have the zone, the CAD zone, just everything would be special exception.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be the way it would be reflected.
Right, right.
But then you get into a board approval process
Yep.
that may influence people not to go.
Right.
If you know what you can do, and then it kind of green lights some stuff.
It also, I think if everything's a special exception, it opens up the door to be like, well, I know this really isn't the use, but, that use isn't going to be here for 5 years, so we'll just go ahead and permit it, and then that one property
Creep.
becomes you
Yeah.
get that creep into
Yeah.
what we're exactly trying to avoid by having so many special exceptions.
Also get into arbitrary and capricious.
Right, exactly. So I think that fewer special exceptions.
Yeah,
And I think that maybe in my mind, the special exception is more along the lines of, we already have this use in this area or nearby, so no, like.
That's one of the criterias in the
Right.
code. So one of the criterias to grant a special exception is that it's not duplicating a use somewhere else.
Yeah.
okay.
Like, this is something that the town needs and doesn't have an
Correct, yeah.
duplication and
So like when we did the special exception for, that we had to do for the antennas, for the on the water tower, one of the things we said is this is the location where you can have the antennas. It couldn't really be anywhere else based on how everything that was needed.
It's kind of difficult, right, when you think about arts, you know, it's so broad. I mean, the definition of art can be so broad that it does make it difficult to say, you know, even the outdoor theater, they actually have made comeback with like bean bags and people putting up and screening old movies and, you know, so, yeah, it's,
Yeah, outdoor theater at that time was almost like a drive-in.
That I think is the reference that it's
Right.
referring to, I think.
that would be different, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think now that we have this definition, I actually didn't, unfortunately, I did not have a chance to go over
That's
it.
okay.
So now that we have this definition, I think I'd like to go through this and then probably edit and add to my commentary.
And you all, so one of the things that I didn't realize until afterwards, Wade brought this up. I'd saved it as an Excel to Google Docs, Google Sheets, so that you could all edit on the same one. What I didn't realize is it also sent it to you as an Excel, so you could download it as an Excel. So I apologize for that confusion if any of you had that issue. But you should be able to you can all have access to the one that's on the screen. So you can add your notes directly into this one that
It's in
Lexi
there, yeah, no
already had.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting if no one else has any comments on this.
That's no problem. I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.